I think, it's the point of this, I guess, conversation for me is to, share with listeners some thought processes around defining who you say you want to be and looking ahead and into the future and going, if that's who I want to be in a future state, how do I get there? How do I start to develop, those characteristics? How do I guess, adopt that mindset and think about what do you have to do to get to that place? Now, let me try and give you some experience or some examples based on our experience. We go back to, Stephanie sharing with her, with you that, she referred to me as her favorite Neanderthal. And that was just me being so rough around the edges, trying to prove myself as a man, doing all the things that I needed to do, or I felt I needed to do back then, was the realization at some point that, holy cow, it's a choice. And if I want to show up, I have to start looking into the future, but also I have to have a model. So for me, I was looking at other successful business people that I admired, individuals, and particularly men, of course, who I looked at and went, "Wow, I like how they show up." And they weren't rough around the edges. They were actually quite refined. They were thoughtful in how they approach subject. They weren't necessarily confrontational, which to this day I can be quite controversial or confrontational if challenged, but because I push back. But the point of it, I guess, is that when I looked at some of the men that I admired and very, very successful, certainly in any rights, I guess, if any by anybody's definition, I started to realize that I had to change a little bit about how I reacted to situations, how I showed up, how I interacted with people. I've shared on more than one occasion, the feedback I got once about how curt and abrupt I was, and or how intimidating I was, and I went, "Holy cow! None of that is my intention," but yet that's how I occurred. So I had to actually really observe and then make adjustments for how I was showing up and who I was being. It was intentional. Now, I'm going to stop there for a second. Just let you got any comments on that so far?
No, I think it's good because it's really allowing us to bring some of our past selves back as to when we decided, consciously or unconsciously, to build our life on purpose, build it by design, and work backwards from not just what we thought it would look like, but what do we want? For me, it was what I wanted my life to feel like.
Hmm.
I didn't want it to feel busy and heavy and complicated and hard, and that didn't interest me at all. I wanted to take the skills and the gifts and the learnings that I was, working on at that time, and I wanted to have a life that could feel. The big word for me back then was flow. I wanted flow. I wanted peace. I wanted, to access joy.
Hmm.
I wanted to have certain things around abundance and a prosperity mindset, and I wanted to be able to make a contribution on the planet. So those were my quote unquote goals, and those were my desired outcomes. And what it did is it forced me to narrow my focus. Is that if that's what I wanted to do and who I wanted to be, as to Dennis Waitley, his famous quote is, you set a goal in order to become the person that either has earned or deserves to be that. You don't set it just to blow your life up. Because when you
Hmm.
set a goal, this mini crisis goes off in your mind, and all the things that come in to tell you that you can't have that happen. So if you don't commit to a bigger why or something that you can actually see or visualize in the future, then it's very difficult to take the smallest next right step in the direction of that outcome. And that's what I learned early on, is that yes, I had to be present and fully in the moment, etc. But if I didn't know where I was going, I could have taken any road to get there and made multiple mistakes and made decisions. I find that my decision making power, because of how I work backwards, I make decisions. I decide, I move on. I decide, I move on. I decide, I move on. Even when we're buying furniture for our renovation, yeah, that's the one I want, check. I don't need to look at 5 or 6 different light fixtures. That's the one I want. Decide, move on. It's in my price range. Got it. Deliver. It's just a quicker way for me to get to the result that I want, so that I don't have to live into this world of confusion or fear or complication or complexities. That back then, when I started deciding that I wanted my life to feel like flow and joy and ease, and the word that my every year I come up with at New Year's, my same word every year for the last 32 years, is peace.
Hmm.
That's my only goal. So when I see myself into the future, my future state, And the way that I want to show up is peaceful. And when I'm not that, I have to look at myself and I have to check in. So peace and joy and love and flow and all, they're just words. But what they did back then was they gave me a bit of a roadmap and a blueprint so that if I would make a decision in the direction that I wanted to go, if it didn't bring me some sort of peace or some type of learning or humility, then I made a different choice. And actually, it says that on the back of the jerseys, and it has for 22 years at Quantum Speed. It's like we took a big stamp and put the word decide on the back of the hockey sweaters so that the player that is skating behind the guy in front of him always knows that he's in choice. And that's the other thing that really helped me on this trajectory of creating my future state, is knowing that I had to make decisions. I couldn't just walk the middle. I had to decide. And, if I screwed up or I didn't like the result, I got to re-choose. So all that being said, working backwards from a future state. And that's how I coach the athletes now, is working backwards from what it is you say you want, and then making the decisions in the smallest possible way. Like, think big, huge, but act small. Take small steps.